So I got my start with photographing artwork. I used to dance and sing. That was my career prior to being a photographer. And when I made that pivot, I was living in North Florida. I went to this community college that had this amazing graphic design and photography program, like gorgeous studios. I've never walked into the computer lab and to see like all these Macs. And I'm like, oh, I was like, this is amazing. So I went to school there like it was my job. You know, I wasn't married yet. I didn't have kids yet. But I took every single class, and I was a cashier at Home Depot. Like, that's literally what I did. And they paid for my education. So I took every class, and because I did that, and I was an adult, I became like a teacher's pet, you know, of sorts. So I was asked to do a lot of things, and that first year that I was there, we created or revived a literary/art journal, an annual that they were going to produce, and they needed the artwork photographed. So, you know, my professor and I, we got right down into, you know, maybe a fellow student, we got right down into it, learning how to photograph art. I don't remember any of it. I just was like, what? I mean, I was barely learning how to use a camera at that time, but I was there, you know. What's that?
Was that on slides at the time?
No, it was digital at that point. Yep, it was digital. I came into it just on the edge of film, just as film photography was leading, and they were super excited about digital photography. So they like, we're doing digital, you know. And at that point, I think like we had the same camera. I was like, I had the same camera the school does, you know, because that's all there was, you know. So I jumped right in, and fast forward a lot of years later. I moved to Ocala. I was married with kids at the time, and I met Justin Alsadek there in the photo, and he asked if I would photograph his artwork, and I did. I skipped a big, huge portion of that. Pardon me. Maybe this was kind of maybe this happened at the same time. Maybe my timeline's not right. I was a board member over at FAFO for a number of years. When they found out I was a photographer, they asked if I would photograph their permanent collection, and they have an extensive permanent collection. They don't accept artwork anymore. They're not in them. It used to be like I think that people at the show would donate pieces and such. So they need it documented, and it was under the guise of like, we just need it documented. Like, we have spreadsheets that have names and the dates they were received, but we don't actually have photographic proof. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that. And so it took me like 2 or 3 years, but I created this book, and in it you will, I mean, it's everything, and it's every single piece they have. We go from all of their 2D pieces as well as the 3D pieces. And you can, I don't know if anybody wants to look at it, you can throw it on the floor. But it was in that process, you know, I really went in with the idea of like, we're just photographing this for posterity. You know, that was the whole thing. And I mean, this is all finished artwork. This is framed. These are maybe behind some sort of glazing, whether it's acrylic, glass, museum glass. Maybe it's not. I have no idea. But I think it was, once I got into it, I'm like, this is hard. You know, and I'm taking a photo, and I'm looking in my viewfinder, I'm like, what is that line? I don't know what that line is. And then I was like, I took a picture, and I put my hand, and I was like, oh, it's the tripod. You know, and then I'm trying to get something to mask off the tripod, you know, and I dove deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And so much to learn in that process. And then I think somewhere in there, like I said, it was like a 2 or 3 year process, because it was like trying to coordinate schedules, and, you know, is a meeting happening, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I had time to process it, you know what I mean, and maybe look at the digital image and what can I improve on it. And then I started offering up my services. Justin asked, I said sure, and then a couple few. It's not like a big part of my business, but I know how to do it, so I figure why not? You know, I'll put it out there for anybody. I do have like a little. This is gonna be like a cheat sheet, so to make sure that I capture and I'm talking about everything. But it's just to mention, you know, you photograph it for a few reasons. Like, are you planning to print it? You know, are you just using it to share on social media? Or are you creating a package, maybe a submission for a museum or a gallery, for a show. They all have their kind of purpose. Obviously, if we're going to photograph for print, we need it to be just right, just spot on. Is photography the best way to do that? I don't think so. I think scanning is a better option, but to find somebody that's going to do that for you, and then to make sure that they have the latest and greatest software that's going to knit all those scans together and it's going to look perfect, that's a little bit of a challenge, but I think for photography, I think you can definitely, depending on the size print that you decide to reproduce it at, photography works great, especially if you have if you have a large piece and you're making it small, I think it works okay. Do I think that you need all this to do that? Yes and no. Maybe, yeah, if you're going to have it for print, I think it's probably best to either leave it in the hands of a professional, or maybe just make a little studio. It doesn't have to have strobes. It doesn't, there are ways around that. We'll talk about that. But you need to invest a little bit into that. If you were doing it for our social media, we all know that it's okay. You can use your phone, that's just fine. You want to make it look good. You don't want to throw a filter on it, and I'm sure you all know that. You want to put a filter over your own work. But if it's going to be like what in its play, on display in a room view, or is it somebody buying it, or is it holding it, or is it, that's going to depend on your brand and however you want that. But that's really not why we're here today. We're kind of learn some of the nitty-gritty stuff. What you are going to need for something like this is a camera, a decent camera. There are so many good Canon, Nikon. They all make some great entry-level cameras that I think that are perfectly fine for this type of photography. But you want to be able to photograph in a RAW format and then process that RAW format. You need a processor, a RAW processor. I happen to use Capture One, and I'll flip this around maybe when I show a little bit of what I do. But if you've heard like the word Lightroom passed around, that is a RAW processing program. You'll want something that way. When you capture a RAW photo, you're capturing, it's what it is. It's the raw form of the photo, and you can then do so much manipulation within that. Now for artwork, you don't need to manipulate much, but it gives you all of that detail work in order to export it to a proper file from there. You'll want your camera to have a decent resolution, and I think that cameras these days, they all have a very good resolution. They're all good. I hate to say that. They get better and better, but they're fine down here. They're great up here, but they're just fine here. They'll work, they're still capturing detail. Let's see, we talked about that. A tripod is necessary. Right now this is a camera stand, and I love it, and this tripod head it's a little overkill, but it's great for this. It has little knobs that do these little micro movements so that I can control all the different axis points, so that I can have it square in the image, so that I'm making the very best image that I can. When I start, I want to fill the frame as much as I can through my viewfinder, just so that I'm utilizing as many pixels as I can, and I'm eliminating very few. If we shoot here and our subject is here, we're getting rid of so many pixels, and then you're like, well, I want to blow that up, and then you have to stretch all those pixels, and then it's not so good. So you fill the frame with whatever. And if we were, like right now I'm photographing in landscape format, if his art piece was portrait orientation, I would then rotate the camera to fill the frame. I use a shutter release because I don't want to have any kind of camera shake. Granted, the strobes they stop movement too. It's probably a little bit overkill, but I have everything just right. You know what I mean? If I don't need to touch it, then I just use my shutter release. Let's see. Before I ever start taking a photo, there are two tools that I use to make sure that I'm capturing the correct color. that's always so challenging, like, period. You know what I mean? But I use a gray card. I'll photograph the gray card. And then when I'm in my raw processor, there is a dropper tool, a little dropper, and I will touch it on here and it'll turn everything the way it's supposed to be. It's magic. The other tool, and I lost it and I can't find it. It's called a color checker passport. And it's just mine was a little wallet thing that you would open and you photograph it, and it's got all these little swatches and CMYK and all kinds of really pertinent colors, and you can create a profile, color profile. It's a little bit more in depth, but and actually sometimes, especially with Jordan's work, he likes to use magenta, and when they're magenta and reds, they're very hard to capture with the sensors in the camera. That just is such a difficult. So I would use that, and it's telling me, like, the computer and this card and everything says, this is the color, this is what it's supposed to look like, and I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't look like that. You know, and I do work on a calibrated computer. This one is not calibrated right now. It's probably been like 6 months. I don't use it to edit on. I just use it to see the images as they pop up. But using a calibrated monitor, making sure that everything is just right. Because if we go and everything's great, and then you send it off to print, and then everything is underexposed, and you're like, ooh. You know, you probably would have a proof made anyway, but that could be the reason. It's just all the calibration. But that's also another tool that I use with the gray card and everything. Let's see. Yep, we did that one. Also, what aperture you want to photograph that at? If you were using a DSLR like I am, you know, you have an interchangeable lens. You want to choose a lens that maybe if you've done your research or you've noticed, that has the least amount of barrel distortion, and you all know what that is. Maybe you can kind of get an idea. But when you photograph something square, you'll notice it like kind of bowing out at the side, and it's just the optics. It's just the way that camera is. And actually, in a lot of these raw processors, you'll see that there's a lens correction, and you find your make and model, and you go click, and it goes, you know. Otherwise, you can make micro adjustments to bring that in. But I would say expect some form of barrel distortion, especially, I mean, there's probably glass out there, lenses out there that are top notch, you know, they're probably upwards of $10, $15, $20,000 lenses that will probably be really, really, really good. But I just stick to like the $2,000 lenses. You know, not just the $2,000, but you know what I mean. That's, you know, if I know that I can correct it in a program, I'm likely to go that route. Also, so we talked about the lens. Now the aperture, and this is something I learned probably just about 5 years ago. I had no idea. But on most lenses, the sharpest, what is it called? The, not least acceptable, most acceptable sharpness, I think is what it's called. Anybody? Is like 7.1, f7.1. So I make a point to photograph at 7.1 because I know that across the board, and I'm photographing something that's flat, that I'm going to get the sharpest image. Not, you would think something like with a small aperture, like something like an f22, you think, oh, I'm making it really sharp. Not necessarily. Your lens is probably like, it's doing all these crazy things inside, and it might be soft on the edge. So I stick to right in the middle, 7.1, and that will, I know that if I find a focus point in the center, if I go to the sides, I'm making the sharpest image that I can from corner to corner the whole way around. And I hate to get into the weeds about all this because some are like, you know, but you know, maybe there are some people that understand that I want to be there for you. I don't use a polarizer. Polarizers are recommended a lot of times if there's something shiny, or if you're shooting, photographing glass, or there's a heavy varnish on it or something. It might temper that. I don't do it. I've probably run into situations where I might have benefited from it, but most of the pieces that I photograph are ready to go. I'm not getting them in the pre-varnish stage. So so I just keep manipulating the light and keep playing with the light until I can get it right. And that's maybe takes a little bit more time on my part, but it's just me, so I'm okay with that. Let's see. Yeah, so yes, speaking of varnish, so if I'm requested to photograph somebody's art, I do try to request like pre-varnish or pre anything. I just want it like as, and I know that if it doesn't take away from the finished piece, if the varnish is that extra layer that's noticeable, then I will include it, but I try to get it so that it's not as flat, but as flat. Let's see. So with the lighting, I've done all kinds of things. I experiment all the time. You want the softest light, hitting it. And that might not be true for every piece. If your piece has a lot of texture, maybe you do want a hard light so you can show some of those shadows. So it is grippy and gritty and has all that goodness, all the texture. But I think like something like I'm here with just a reflective silver umbrella, it's a little bit more specular. I am going to get some of that in my highlights, but it works just fine. I used to photograph into a V-flat, so those are just the foam core that's taped, and I would photograph into that and just throw the light that way, and it worked. It worked okay. This was a new method that I learned from his name's Tony Corbell. He's a longtime photographer. I think he's in New Mexico, and he has some great tips. So I photograph his way now, which is I create an equilateral triangle based on like a longer dimension than the longest dimension of the artwork. So I'll measure the artwork diagonally. That one's 38 inches, and I'm beyond the 38 inches. So I'm 38 on the 45s, and then I'm 30. Well, I'm not. It's 5 feet. I decided to go 5 feet wide on that. When you have an umbrella is called a modifier with your lights, and it modifies the light, it shapes it. This modifier, if you think of a spoon, and water falls on the spoon, and it makes that pattern. If you drop water into a ladle, it goes up. You know what I mean? So the light is doing the same thing. This is merely just creating that light. So this is capturing this in here, and it's just throwing it all here. So this is hitting this, and it's just kind of going right across it. It's just kind of, it's feathery, and I might even tip it a little bit more this way to where they call it feathering, when it's just kind of, the light is just kissing the surface. I'll raise these up a little bit so they're kind of centered on the light, but that's one way to look at those, to think about the lighting pattern. Now the other way you can do this is natural light. There's nothing wrong with natural light. The way you would do that, I would find some kind of open shade, and what they mean is just, you're literally in shade, but it's open to the light. Something like a porch, or I wouldn't take it outside, but in a canopy of trees, that would introduce some other things. But something like a porch or even if it's like a very neutrally kind of, if you have a lot of window light, if you picture something like a garage door or something like that, you can get some really nice lighting, and it's just very soft, and it's hitting everything because that sun and those clouds are making like the biggest modifier in the world. They're throwing all that natural light onto it. So the only thing we have to worry about in a situation like that is obviously weather, but that's obvious. But it's color cast. So if your porch is like, and there's grass, you might have that green, tinge to a green tone reflecting back up to it. So you really have to be careful. And that's so easy to solve. Just get a white bed sheet, lay it down on the ground, and that eliminates any kind of color casting there. Or be careful if you have one of these classic, cracker house with a paint blue, then you get that color casting. Paint your ceiling, I guess. but just kind of, but that's the simple worry that you have there. And then of course, avoid things like dappled sunlight, anything that's really going to throw a wrench into your finished piece. But I think that's a really good, especially I think natural light is definitely good for like a social media, and especially if you find something that's working, just take some notes and like, this is where I put this. This is the time of day I like to do this. This is my lens choice. This is my aperture. This is everything, so that when you do it, you know, keep a hook on something or whatever, you know, to make it just so that you can repeatable, you know, and because you do want to have that consistency with your social media too. You want, you know, you have your consistency within your own work, but you don't want it to be tainted by like, oh, it was really sunny day, and then it was like one of these, like an overcast day. Those are gonna be two different, you know. Granted, if you use the gray, the card, you'll be able to match that. So, but if you don't have a card, then, you know, you've got to figure out a way to balance those color temperatures so that everything is unified. That would be my biggest on there. Let's see. Yeah. Well, I like to do with the, I also use some other tools that I use here in the studio. Is I do use a light meter. And I will set this, I set this to my specs. I know what for my photographers, I know what my ISO is. My ISO is always going to be the lowest so that I can capture I'm not compromising the image. I'm getting the tightest grain wonderfulness of that low ISO 100. And then I know what aperture I want to shoot at 7.1. So I merely hold this. I'll check it in all four corners and make sure that they're all getting the same reading. Once everything is getting the same reading, then I know that my exposure is proper, is ready to go. Sometimes I do, and it happens more often than not. When I photograph it, it's telling me, it's saying this is right, and I look at my computer, I'm like, that's completely overexposed, that's crazy. But it could be in the paint that's used, if it has any kind of reflective material in it. It could be in the varnish. It could be anything. So I'll just make adjustments for it. You know, I'll visually look at it. I know this is not calibrated, but I'll look at it and go, this isn't right. Let me bring it down a little bit. So I bring it down a little bit. And I'm like, okay, that's better. You know, and definitely upon delivery with clients, I say, what can we improve? What can we make better? You know, and it's a little bit of a collaboration at that point. You know, because I don't have the piece there. I'm not working next to the piece. You know, and I can kind of remember, and the computer and everything's telling me it looks like this, but I know it doesn't look like that. So it's a little bit of a collaboration at that point. Let's see, what else do I do? Sorry, we're gonna see you guys. We're done. Let's see. We talked about that. Yep. Yeah, that's more like just about what you do. Yeah, we kind of covered. Those are just a lot of like a big overview of what I do. I thought I would do a demonstration. Jordan brought a piece of his art, and I thought I'd just kind of talk through that process a little bit, and I'll turn the computer around so you all can see what's happening, and probably watch me like sweat a little. Like, this is not working the way it's supposed to work. So I'll just get started. What we do, does anybody have any questions up until that point? I should have asked. Okay, Diego.
When is the best time to take pictures outside?
I know. It depends on so many things. It depends what direction you're facing. It depends on the season. You know, as long as you're not getting like direct sunlight, something's hitting you. You can do it any time of day. You know, if you notice, like if we go out there now, obviously the sun has set or is setting, and it's dark, and then you have to bring up your exposure somehow. You might compromise the image a little bit because we want to stay at 7.1 ISO 100. So something's got to give, you know. It could be a slower shutter speed, and that's fine because nothing's moving, you know, it's painting, you know. So you can kind of experiment, but I would concentrate more on the quality of light than the time of day. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah, and you know, you have your golden hour. You know, you can get away from that by using that gray card and bring everything back, you know, take away some of that warmth in the computer, but yeah, as long as you maybe are not in that like sunrise, sunset, you know, blue hour, golden hour, if you're in that nice crunchy time in the middle, you're probably okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Focal length that you're using?
Focal-
And are you using a fine lens or is it?
I am. I'm using a 50. Just my choice. I feel, or no, right now I have a 100 on here now. No, did I put my 100? I thought I did. I usually use for my art. I do try to use a prime. I have a 50 and a 100. I'm more of a zoom shooter. So on this one, if I have a smaller piece, if I can fit it with my 100, I use my 100. Otherwise, if it's a larger piece, I'll use the 50. I find that the barrel distortion is minimal. I mean, it's there. I'm not gonna, you'll see it. I mean, it's not ridiculous, but it's there, and I just correct it from there. Yeah. I'll even say, like, as far as even in the post-processing, the raw processor, you know, it's a lot different than portrait photography or any other kind of, when you have, when I can put my own flavor on it. I'm not looking to flavor this or season it at all. I want this to be the artist's work, you know. This is not my interpretation of their work. Although Charles Eady was in here and I did some of his work and he was like, oh, I like that. I'm like, I totally didn't mean to change. I didn't change anything. That's just the way I kind of remembered it.
He's gonna start painting in a different palette.
I know. He was totally. He's like, I like that. He's so super fun. But yeah. So there are definitely things. I mean, I noticed sometimes things aren't as contrasty, and I want to bring up that contrast a little bit, especially if it's going to print. You know, because otherwise it's just going to be like. And you want it to like pop, you know, you want it to have that, you know, like just that extra, you know, to make it feel real, because I feel like it can go flat, you know. So things like that, and it's just little tiny adjustments with like your black point and maybe just in the highlights a little bit, just throwing a little more separation to that, to open up that contrast. But there's not a whole lot else that you will want to, you know, unless like you deliver it and they're like, that's totally underexposed or that's too bright or whatever. So we make those adjustments. But okay, so what I'm doing here, like I said, on the diagonal, Jordan's piece is 38 inches. And so I decided, like, I put it at 38, and I was like, close, let me try 5 feet. So I'm going with the 5 feet equal out on a triangle. I do, if I'm able, I do try to just to stick a level on, just to make sure that we're, it's as straight as can be. I think, did you see that? Let me go. Just as straight as I can. So that's pretty, I think that's pretty good. And I think that might have been what I previously set the camera to. I like to put the light in the middle of the piece so that it's, you know, if you put it up high, you would imagine that maybe the top of it would be overexposed. So I just kind of eyeball it. I'm not really into the, I mean, I want it to be precise, but I'm not going to measure it. I'm going to turn these lights on. Right now, like I mentioned, my tripod head is a geared head, and so I'm controlling all the different axes, and that's, yeah, I really do that. And wearing glasses are always hard for me, but let's see. Okay, I probably could go in just a tad. I mean, there have been times too where I will, let me go into, sorry. I think that's pretty good there. What I do is with my focal point that you can dial around inside your lens, I try to find a point around the center where there's contrast. So right now I'm focused, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a yellow and blue right here where maybe the riverbank. I just want some contrast so that the camera sensor and the lens is going, I'm here. You know what I mean? If you put it in, it's really hard, especially with some pieces, if there's just that nice wash of color and you're like, oh, and the computer, the camera's like, can't quite figure it out. So I try to find that part there. I am dialed into my 7.1. I'm setting this to use my remote. This one I'm at shutter speed of 1/160th of a second, ISO 100, f7.1, and yeah. So what I do is I have no idea. I like to just take like an initial shot just to see where we're at, and I have to meter everything still, obviously. Let's see. Is everything still connected? Oh, I have to point it to here. I'm gonna put this away. I'm gonna keep the gray part out. Sorry. Not the biggest screen. I was hoping to have a, let's see. You can see there, it's pretty square in there. If you can see that. It's clearly, I don't think it's correct, but we're gonna go through that in just a second. So I have, is everything dialed in here? Yes. So right now I have this set to my shutter speed and my ISO. It's going to tell me what the f-stop is. So I'm going to make sure that we get to 7.1. And I've got this little handy dandy thing to change my. So I'll hold it up. So this corner, 4.0. We've got a ways to go. We're getting closer. 7.1. Can we do it again? There we go, 7.1. So that's supposed to be that's what the camera says. So, or the meter says. I'm just gonna photograph this really quickly. I did nothing fancy. I just confused it a little bit, put it as close as I can. Okay. And you can see, do you see how like that's completely like crazy overexposed? Let me take one photo here of it. That's crazy, right? It's like it's a little much, don't you think? A little overexposed. So what I do is I will dial it back with my lights. I don't want to take the one way I could alter the exposure is if I raise that aperture from like 7.1. Maybe I go to 8 or 9, but I don't really want to change that because I like that sweet spot of 7.1. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust the lights, and I'm going to expose. I'll try 6.3 real quick. You can close your eyes again. Yeah, it's brutal when you like put your eyeballs right in it. It's crazy. Oh, they're chirping. Oh, I shouldn't have stood there. Woo! Whoops, and I didn't mean to do that. So that second one probably won't be as bright, just because the lights probably didn't recycle. I'm probably looking at that one. Yeah, that one's a little bit brighter, but you can see that. No, they did work better, but we're getting there. We just take the time. We take the time to dial it in from there. You know, and I mean, I've had it where the artist is with me, and we can look at these images, and I'll know if I favored it, you know, put some sort of a mark on it, that when I'm home and working at my other computer and I'm uploading, I'm like, okay, I know this is where we're at. This is what we're going for. This is what the piece looks like. You know, and I definitely still have to make adjustments from there. Definitely. There's not like, let me see, I don't know if I can, how much I can zoom in. You can see a lot of the texture there. There's no, I mean, did you say there's varnish on here or no varnish or the acrylic is?
I believe it is varnish.
I do see some, I don't know if that's in the paint or the, let me see if I can find that spot on here. I don't have that one. I think it was in somewhere in some of these spots. You can see even, I mean, like, well, I can notice it. You guys aren't up here and up close and personal, but you can see where there's a little bit more of the reflection, where that might read as a deeper, darker black, but it's just that light is just kissing it a little bit, and it's just taking that reflection just a little bit. But again, that's just in that, that's right in that area. Does anybody have any questions on the setup or anything from that part of it? Yes, sir.
Well, as I said, I'm not a professional. I'm completely lost there. So what did you do there? You control the lights? Because you didn't touch the camera anymore.
No, I didn't touch the camera at all. I just have this little, I have obviously a trigger and receivers,
Yeah.
right? So I'm using a remote, set it up with the camera, and so that's what's happening there. And then this one just helps me adjust the lights. This is just a little controller that I can adjust the lights remotely.
Okay.
So I don't have to go
Understand.
click. Yeah, you know what? This is like super old technology. I had my studio lights for like, I don't know, 7 years, and I was literally like climbing up a ladder, click, and they had this on the website, and it was like cheap. It saved me. I was like, now I feel fancy, like, but it's still like kind of dated because now people have their phones and their apps and things like that. I don't have those fancy lights, but yes. Any other questions?
Do you have a business card? Because that's all beyond me.
But do you agree that you can use natural lighting and get some of your own images?
Yeah, but
I don't even know what you're looking for when you go in to talk to him about certain things. What are you looking for?
Oh, what I was looking for was just reflection. So that's why
Not detail?
no, I know there's detail. Yes, I do examine the piece. Like I'll zoom in and make sure before I move on to another piece, I look in the different corners and make sure that it's still sharp. Because there are times when that I should probably be manually focusing, but my eyes aren't that good. I don't trust. I just don't trust it. I do trust my camera, my lenses to find that focus for me. I can't do it. I don't know. I don't trust myself. But no, so I'm checking for detail, definitely, making sure there's nothing that's soft, making sure I see that texture. But I'm looking for the reflection, because when you have something, whether it's your acrylics or whether it's a varnish or whether it's this silver wax or whatever, those are going to throw light back at you, and especially when it's not intentional. Like here, you can look at the piece and you can see how deep and dark and moody that little knot is in that tree. And then you go on here and it looks like it's just like a little star, like it's nothing, because the light bouncing off of it. Does that make sense? A little bit more. So that's what I'm looking for, and that's where we might be able to control. And I won't go nuts here, and you can't see it anyway. But that's where I'd want to go and maybe adjust a little bit of this contrast. I'm just going to be really drastic with it so you can see. I would never do that, but it really deepened those shadows and brightened up the highlights. But and I would maybe even that's light. Yeah, just making things a little deeper, and but definitely not playing with color, not playing with saturation. And maybe sometimes a little saturation, but it's just a hair. It's just a hair, and that's usually at the artist's request. Not mine, because like I say, if I have everything very neutral and everything is set in the camera, then I'm trusting that technology is giving me the results that I need. And I think it's the same whether it's a scanned piece or if it's a photograph piece. You still have that translation into digital, and a lot can be lost in between there, and it depends on the person who's taking your order and the person behind the camera, or you know what I mean. So you want to make sure that it's true from start to finish, but there's a lot of gray area in between that you've got to like tighten up. Have you found that with yours?
Yes, I've worked with an artist who does a lot of texture, and she loves that contrast, and she really wants me to kind of ramp it up, because I think she feels like maybe the photograph isn't really truly representing, so she really wants, when someone sees that on her website, she wants to see she uses a lot of texture.
Yeah.
And so she wants to see the lights and the darks, and so she'll even ask me to bump up the clarity a little bit, and maybe even underexpose it a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, she's paying me
I know. Well,
You know, what am I, I would go,
nah.
because when they come in to view the piece,
Yeah.
and they look at the picture, and they look at the piece, and they look at the picture, and they look at the picture, like, not the same.
Yeah.
That's her choice, if that's what she wants.
Exactly. No, yeah, I know, I agree. It's always it's a little bit of a challenge, and there's some works that just don't translate to a printed piece. And that, like I think like she showed me back there. Yeah, there was a piece she has with the silver wax, and it just kind of, she goes, I want it to glitter. I'm like, it's never gonna glitter. Like, you can photograph it 6 ways of Sunday, and it's never gonna show glitter. Because it's just that all those, you just have to imagine what that light is doing, and that light is how it's affecting every, the texture of the canvas and the light and any kind of texturing of paint and the color of it. And you know, if you paint something green and it's shiny and a light hits it, it's going to turn white. You know what I'm saying? Like in that way, like a highlight, a real fine highlight there. But that's just kind of, I don't know. I think there's a lot of interpretation there, and that's kind of where it gets a little scary, I think. You know.
You don't want to misrepresent their piece.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
100%.
the struggle.
I'm not
Yeah,
in
that's
it
the
for me.
struggle. Yeah.
No, right. It can definitely be a challenge. Definitely a challenge. And I think like all the tools that I have, and I'm always trying new things. Always trying to experiment and find a better way, something that's a little bit more efficient. But you know, it's just like you all, like when you have your canvas or your piece in front of you, you know, you're always trying new things. It's the same thing, though. I have to stay true. So stay true to that. Any other questions on that?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if we don't have a studio space like this, what would you suggest for artists to take photos?
Like a location, like location,
No, I mean like, what equipment?
What equipment?
Would you suggest?
I would suggest a camera. A camera with a tripod. Definitely a tripod. If you want to try your hand, I would just get your feet wet with natural light. I would do the open shade option. And this is where you really have to want to do it, because it's a lot of playing. Like, you can't get frustrated as soon as you try it and you're like, it didn't work, I quit. You know, like, just try again. You know, just do it again. Go put it up. What's wrong with the piece? Evaluate it a little bit. If you learn a little bit more about a DSLR camera, it's not the perfect meter, but it has a meter in it. It will get you in a very good exposure if you can learn how to do that. That's another class. But if you know a little bit, you can try auto. Maybe it'll work, but I think that's just frame after frame might be different. You know, it depends if the sun is behind a cloud, then it's not. Well, the camera is doing all this compensating and calculations to determine what your exposure should look like. That could work if you just play with it on auto. Maybe. You can put it on a shutter speed priority or an aperture priority. If I told you that 7.1 is great, you set your camera to 7.1, and the camera will figure out how to make the exposure for you. And that's just a real simple setting. It's not complicated. And if it's on a tripod, you don't have to worry about the shutter speed. You know, just leave it open as long as you need to. But you can trust the little camera meter inside your camera. But I would say try the open light, try the open shade, natural light. See if you like it. You know, you have to think of so many different things. We talked about making it square. Figure out how to make it square. You need this focal plane of this lens has to match the plane of that piece. You know, and if you look like and you see it's keystoning in one direction or the other, then you have to figure that out. On your tripod, lift it up a little bit. You know, I told you about Charles Eady's work, and if you're familiar with it, some of those pieces are ginormous, and we couldn't stand them upright. I had to photograph them on their side, and we leaned them against the wall. So I had to match that. You know, we put the camera at an angle to photograph the artwork. So, you know, check for things like that. Is it square? Is it properly exposed? Is there a color cast? Oh yeah, shoot, I forgot there was the green grass over there. Let's get a bed sheet or something and put that down to counter that. But just keep going at it. Just dedicate. You know, don't put 20 pieces and say I'm going to do this today. No, just pick one piece, figure it out. You know, because you still. I mean, you've had the challenge of photographing it. You still have the challenge of what are you going to do with it once it enters your computer. You know, you have to play with that end. If you find that you have enjoyed that part of the process, or you feel like, yeah, I have a good idea on how to do that, then work on the computer end. Maybe you need to calibrate that computer. You know, look into investing into some calibration software, or investing into photo editing software. You know, just getting yourself a Lightroom, just a photography package from Adobe. You know, with Lightroom and Photoshop, so you can do that basic stuff in it. And you know, from there, it's just your willingness. Like, it's a lot, and I think that's why you hire people. You know, because your time may be better spent creating art. That's what you're getting paid for. You know, unless you love it. You know, I mean, like, if you love it and it's just a part of your process, then you feel like learning all about it, then do it. Outside of that, if you feel like you're beyond that, then I think it's then in time to invest in strobes, and that's a whole other ball game. You know, you can do another great option that's really readily available right now is just the constant lights, and you don't have to worry about syncing anything, but it's literally what it sounds like. It's a constant light. You turn it on and you're done. So it's giving you that light, and they're pretty affordable now. You know, what you have to be careful of with those are just making sure that you can adjust the color temperature, that it's not locked into just one. I don't know what that's called when you can change the color temperature of your light, but you know, get something that you can modify that, manipulate it, and that's really simple. I mean, that's probably as simple as it gets. I totally forgot about that.
So I have a question about
Yes,
that.
sir.
So I'm taking pictures at home and I try to get a light, you know, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, it's not very fancy, but it's a kind of like a boom light type situation. But I'm using like an LED light.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Should I switch it out for something else?
I think an LED is fine as long as you can get like a good daylight temperature, like 5500 Kelvin or something like that. Like,
okay.
Yeah, you just want to kind of be in there. But if you buy one of these little $10 cards and photograph the card, and then use your little picker, your white balance picker of the tool. I'll show you what it is if you're not familiar. And
I'm not familiar. You said Lightroom is a good.
Yeah, Lightroom
I'm
is
familiar with a lot of like Adobe products, but not photography.
Yeah, Lightroom is a good. I mean, I use Capture One because I like the tethering. I like being able to connect this. This is. Some people say it's superior. I jumped on that bandwagon because other people said it was cool, so I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm cool. But I like Capture One, and I like the way it organizes. A lot of times it's about the file handling. I like that. But so no, go Lightroom. Lightroom is, I think it's like $100 subscription for a year, and you get Lightroom and Photoshop. You actually don't even need Lightroom. You can use like Camera Raw, Adobe's other raw processor, and that's. They're one and the same to me. They are. Purists will say otherwise.
Sure, but for like real simple stuff like that.
No. You bring it up in there. You can make some of your adjustments and get that white balance tool click on your gray, and you'll go, oh yeah, that was super warm. Oh my gosh.
Because I just want it to look good enough to submit to like a show. You know?
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. We had a little conversation. Was it Carla or who did I have a conversation with? Was it you, Kathleen? Were we talking about artist submissions? It's like when you're submitting, you have to determine, like, she was like, but I want them to see the texture and everything, but then what are they asking you to upload it to? Like, are they like saying it needs to be like under 150 kilobytes and like 200 pixels by 400? They're not looking at, they can't see detail ever.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? So like, just take that into account. See what their submission says and be like, oh, okay. Like, click phone. I mean, your phone.
That's what I've been using.
Some of your phones, I know they're better than this. They have higher resolution than my camera. I know it. I mean, and that's okay. I mean, the camera. No, I won't go on that tangent. But the cameras do things. The phone cameras manipulate. You don't have a lot of control over it. But it's still it's, I hate to say good enough, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
You know, for some, you can appreciate that a little bit, you know. I'm not trying to talk down with your work. I'm just saying, you have to really consider what you're doing this for. I mean, I'm not trying to bring up Charles again, but a lot of his work that he brought was totally finished, or some of it was in process. So it was like, I'd probably say it was like 90% done. But he was like, I was getting so like weird reflections because some parts were varnished and some weren't, and he painted over something, and he goes, oh, that's fine. It's just for this, I want to put together this package. You know what I mean? I'm like, you sure? Like you sure? All right, here you go. You know, but that was the case in that, and that's sort of where he actually taught me to let go a little bit, you know, because I think I got, with the FAFO thing, I got all hyped up, like, oh my gosh, there are reflections, oh my gosh, it's glass, how do I fix this? And you spend like, they didn't even know where the books were. I went over there to ask them for, can I bring it just as a sample? And they're like, oh, I don't know where it is. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did all that work. I mean, that's the way I am. I just like to kind of take that dive into things, but I got hyped up from that, and he kind of brought me down, and now I know enough to kind of ask and go, what is this for? And it's not saying if you're like, oh, I just want some art pieces so that I have it for my portfolio, and nobody's going to see them, and I'm like, oh, okay, click, 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 no, here you go. You know, no, I'm just going to invest my time, but I want to make sure that, you know, if it's something like you're trying to save them for posterity, then you don't need me, you know. This is when you get your phone out and you use it the best way you can, you know. And you can still do, I mean, I think that you can still, what you have to worry about, I think, maybe a little bit on the phone, if anything, is maybe like a little bit of camera shake, but even still, I don't even think you can set it on a timer.
Yeah,
you know.
that's what I was gonna say.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
Oh.
they do have little remotes that you can Bluetooth to your phone, which is really great. But if you don't have a remote, the 2-second or 5-second timer is going to take away any of that from you pushing the button. That shake, it'll
It's going to settle by that time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I also know Canon, I'm crazy, there's a little device that you can actually connect your phone to your camera.
Oh, yes. You mean an app, like just an app, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Canon has apps. Yeah, Canon has apps.
You could take all your photos, like you could set your camera up on the tripod, and then you could take all the photos from your camera.
From your phone, yes. Yeah, you can definitely do that, definitely. I know, I get so old school, like I have this and then I panic when I can't find it. I think there's a Canon app on my phone, but I never use it. I'm like, so do I know how to use it? I mean, you can make all the adjustments and everything. But you know, you just kind of have it, so the way you work. Yeah, any other questions?
I have a question
Yes.
for me.
Oh.
Okay, so the artist is taking glass photos. So how do you do it in a gallery space where the lighting is already set?
Yeah, so I would turn the lights off. That's what I would do first. I would totally do that. And then you have to, when you take that photo, you have to study where that's coming from. I mean, like, where is the reflection? I had a client, it was a headshot. He is a chef. There was a silver refrigerator behind him, and I was trying to temper it. It was just competing with him, and I couldn't, I still don't know what it was, but it was I mean, who knows if it was the white ceilings, I had no idea, but I tried to, I use a lot of times, let's see, like just black foam core. I've got, you know, if I notice something like, especially with this situation here, well, it is probably centered on the wall, but I wanted to find a stud. I'd broken the previous, like one of the last times I photographed art, it broke. It had the baseboard that's stripped. So I wanted to put that hook into a stud today, and it moved us over a little bit. So, but what I have to worry about in this situation, and if I take this home and I analyze it, I might notice it. I don't notice it right now, but you notice it's a little bit closer. I've got that white wall over here.
Yeah.
That white wall is can make just bounce more light. So what I would do is maybe I would stand here and I would block the light. So this is the same thing I would do if I'm going around and you have your little remote and you can see on your thing, you can figure out where is that coming from. Okay, I'm gonna try to block it. Maybe you just set it right here. You know, if you're using natural light, you know, just try to figure out where those reflections are coming from, but it's just hard. There's no other way to say it, I'm telling you. And if you do something like a tripod, you notice it. I mean, that's where I started to pay attention, was in that FAFO book. There are a couple images, if you really look at them, you'll see my tripod. Because I didn't know. And it kind of blended with the image, you know, and like, so then I brought like a black tablecloth and I, you know, put myself in it. Right back behind you. Yep. Yes, ma'am. You know, so it's just kind of experimenting and playing. There are no hard fast rules, unless it's something, and if you're using a phone, I don't know if they make polarizers for phone lenses. They probably do. Who knows? You can try that, but I wouldn't know. But that helps. That does help. You know, if you have your polarized glasses, you know what I mean. That with your sunglasses, you notice how it cuts the glare. It could potentially cut the glare. Some of the reflections, like if you're getting like crazy hard, really hard stuff, it might reduce it, but it might not eliminate it. Yeah.
I'll try that, because especially like where because you know it's all glass.
Yeah.
So then you can see the reflection of the reflections of it.
Yeah, I mean, you could do things like, you could try to invest like in some like the blackout curtains, you know what I mean, and do that. But I would turn off all the lights, the overhead lights. There was one piece over there that I could not move, and it's in a hallway, and it's gigantic. And I was like, I guess I just do it here, you know, and try to figure it out, you know. But it was just that weird. I think all the color was I don't know, a little bit of a mess. But sometimes it just is a challenge. Just know that it's okay.
It's the same challenge like shooting somebody with glasses on.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you can, like, that's the other thing you can maybe do. That's a good point. Glad you said that. Is that, you know, like if I do have somebody with glasses, you remember what we talked about with the light modifier, how that spoon with the water, it does the same thing. So if that's coming directly on the same on the same plane, it's going to throw a reflection. But if I can tilt it a little, then you eliminate that. And that's the same thing with like you might be able to get like little bumpers, you know what I mean, and just put them on the back or put them on the front, and maybe you will eliminate that, you know, a little bit. Something. I mean, good luck. I will not judge you when I see those images come across social media. I know there's a lot. It's a lot of information. I know it's like sometimes it's a little bit in the weeds with the technical part, but it just depends on your willingness to want to learn how to do it. You know. Any more questions?
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Here's what I like about you.
Yeah.
You seem just as surprised that it works out as when it doesn't work out. And I love that about you. I'm just so taken by your style of instruction. And it's like you are genuinely just as surprised when it turns out as when it doesn't.
I love that you said that.
It makes it so easy for me to learn.
Oh, good.
From your style.
Oh, good.
I mean, we've all taken classes from somebody who's like,
I know.
There's no anything outside of the facts. And,
for sure.
And so, thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. That's so delightful. Oh, I love that. No, I don't like I told you, like I mentioned in the beginning, I am such a slow learner. So like, I feel like everything is a constant discovery. I mean, I come in here, I'm a fairly low volume studio, and if I have nothing going on and I feel like it, you know how you have to get yourself out of bed to do things, right? I come in and I just start playing, and I'm like, and I think I know what's happening, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I set this all up, I metered it, I put this gel over here, and this is going to look like this, and then I'm like, let's think that you know, but it is, it's just that total I don't think I'll ever profess to be an expert in anything. I can't do that, but I do know.
Yeah.
I go to so many workshops and so many conventions and so many things, and I do, some of these folks, I do accept them as the gospel, like they might have been around for 30, 40 years and they stick to the same formula and it works, and I would call them an expert, but as somebody that's just 11 years in,
Yeah, I'm only 10.
yeah, who knows, but I'm so glad you said that, thank you, I appreciate you, no, you have no idea, that touched me, I appreciate it, thank you. Any other questions? No?
I learned how to block reflection,
Yeah,
because I mean, most of what you said about oil and land.
sure.
I can take pictures of my work
Oh, yeah.
outside, and if I see a reflection, you gave me some ideas on how to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like especially if you have a space in your home that just seems right now. Granted, you don't want to put like window blocking, light blocking on your window that's like providing the light.
Yeah.
But it definitely just finding it, figuring out where it is, because you just you have no idea sometimes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jenny. That